Hi, everyone, and welcome to our presentation on mindfulness and education in a pandemic world. This will be presented by myself. I'm Meredith Dorner, by my colleague Marni Fisher, and an additional colleague, Kimiya Magzhi. Please note that you can access all of the materials from today's presentation by utilizing the link that is listed on the title slide as well as at the end of our presentation. This presentation examines the importance of mindfulness in the interactions of educators, paraeducators, students, and parents at all levels of education. Mindfulness promotes awareness and understanding and acknowledges the diversity of backgrounds and examines how mindful practices can enhance engagement and interactions in the educational settings for all learners. Mindfulness provides a strong foundation for the education of students through providing optimal conditions for learning and teaching. Through mindfulness, teachers, paraeducators, students, and parents improve their communication, relationships, and acceptance of students from multicultural backgrounds. So by practicing mindfulness, educators can recognize their own prejudice and bias and the limitations of labels on expectations for students, the potential damage of labeling, both of which affect students with abilities as well as disabilities and students who are bilingual. We hope to help develop awareness about beneficial effects of integrating mindfulness into education, and perhaps motivating educators to integrate mindful practices into their teaching and interaction. So we'll be going over our purpose, our perspective, our inquiry questions, some background literature, and the fun part, which is practice and implementation, as well as the impact of those practices.
So what is mindfulness? Mindfulness has its roots in Eastern meditation practices. It has been described by Jon Kabat-Zinn as paying attention on purpose in the present moment and non-judgmentally. The awareness that emerges through a mindful disposition can really help educators as they're teaching in their classrooms. Mindfulness provides a strong foundation for the education of students and creates an optimal condition for learning and teaching.
In this strange world of pandemic education that began in 2020, our practice-oriented workshop focuses on creating moments of peace. Additionally, since the integration of mindfulness practices supports the development of empathy, awareness, presence, clarity of vision, awareness of personal positionality, and a position of open-mindedness and acceptance, the goal here is to offer resources that educators and pre-service teachers can use for themselves and their students. During this COVID-19 pandemic, the shift to online education has changed the dynamics of learning. Furthermore, the choice to deliberately teach paying attention on purpose in the present moment and non-judgmentally, quoted from Kabat-Zinn 2003, is particularly important during digital learning when there is simultaneously so much and so little to distract both the educator and the student.
So we are approaching this using prismatic theory. So prismatic theory originally emerged out of Deleuze and Guattari's rhizomatic theory in 1987, which calls for the deterritorialization of arborescent paradigms, as well as a mapping of phenomenon rather than retracing previous paths. Engaging in collaborative prismatic theory, this practice piece uses 3 points of view to examine the implementation of mindfulness practices. The perspectives are professor of biology, teaching undergraduate biology and anthropology, professor of education, teaching graduate pre-service teachers, and K-8 educational leader and professor of undergraduate English composition and education. So next we have the inquiry questions.
So our first inquiry question was, have you ever used mindful techniques before? And if so, what kind of effects have you noticed on yourself and those around you during and after engaging in them? And our second question was, how can you see integrating mindfulness into your life, your work, and your classroom? And what might prevent you from doing so? And how might you measure the impact that mindfulness has on you and your students in college or colleagues? So our background literature, the components of this had to do with several things, several components. Two facets or key important components of this, of mindfulness, was self-regulation of attention and non-judgmental awareness. Other names for mindfulness are participatory observation, which is quoted from Brown, Ryan, and Creswell, and beginner's mind, which comes from really Zen Buddhism, referring to having an openness of attitude and eagerness and a lack of preconceptions when studying at an advanced level, just as a beginner's mind would have.
There are several benefits to engaging in mindful practice. In general, it helps with improving attention, balance, and compassion, as well as reducing being reactive and impulsive during times of stress, which we can all agree is where we are living these days. It helps with improving empathy and perspective, as well as resilience and well-being. Specifically, we can look at benefits for educators. And studies have shown that educators, particularly right now, are juggling a number of roles and expectations. And so anything that can help us with reducing stress and anxiety should be beneficial. Mindful practices fall into this group. They've been found to statistically show improvement in anxiety, depression, and stress levels when mindfulness-based stress reduction strategies have been implemented. One study showed this with primary school teachers. It also helps with preventing burnout, improving health and well-being, increasing self-compassion, and developing receptive attitudes of acceptance, kindness, curiosity, and non-judgment, as well as improving emotional regulation. Furthermore, when working with diverse students, mindfulness practices help us to release our static worldview and understand that there are a diverse number and kind of ways of being in the world. This comes directly from work by Rechtschaffen. Each student brings their own culture and experiences with them to education and explores their world using a variety of modalities. Rechtschaffen tells us that children grow up with very different types of discipline and relationships to authority. To teach, we need to understand how each student learns. Which brings us then to looking at the benefits for our students. For students, mindfulness can improve focusing, sustaining, and shifting of attention, as well as encouraging self-regulation of emotion and attention. It helps with reducing anxiety and promoting calming behaviors, and improving compassion for self and others. Mindfulness also sets students up to be present, centered, and responsive to learning, which is so important in this uncertain time of education that we are in.
So our connection to education, for education, Eisner has asserted that there's multiple ways to engage with knowledge. A quote from Eisner states that there are multiple ways in which the world can be known. Human knowledge is constructed from experiences and therefore reflection of mind as well as nature. Additionally, considering how Freire and Macedo identify ways that language and writing are actually used to maintain patterns of dominance and subordination. The integration of mindfulness really to engage with the world in a different way offers a space for authentic engagement with one another and the world, and will hopefully result in reduced stress and a space to engage in the non-dominant narratives. So how can we integrate mindfulness into our practice in education? Well, incorporating mindfulness into our curriculum brings a sense of calm to not only the learner, but also the professor or the educator. So what can we do? We can work on our breath, be aware of our sensory experiences. We can engage in guided imagery. We can use eating as mindful eating as kind of a practice to develop mindfulness. Also engage in sports and listening mindfully.
So as we move into the practice and implementation piece of our presentation, there are a couple items you'll want to have. Something that's small to eat, like a piece of chocolate, but don't eat it yet. A blank piece of paper, as well as pencils, pens, and markers, and things like that. With all of the timelines and deadlines and traffic and technology of our lives, going to conferences, doing our educating, we need to take time to clear our heads. As Kimiya mentioned, key elements of the practice require starting with our beginner's mind and letting our preconceptions and distractions go to focus just on the moment. There's typically a focus on slowing down and appreciating that moment, which integrates all sorts of techniques like meditation-focused breathing, mindful listening, etc. So our focus in the practice piece will be to focus on mindful breathing, mindful eating, mindful listening, and Zentangles. Mindful breathing will walk the listeners through a script of mindful breathing to focus on releasing outside forces. Mindful eating will use a video for focused meditation on chocolate, but you can use any food source that you have available. Mindful listening will examine a Chinese symbol for listening to reflect on digital experiences. And then Zentangles will explore the visual form of relaxation and practice by creating a Zentangle drawing. Marni will walk you through that. So on to our first activity.
So our first activity has to do with mindfulness of breath. I would like to guide you through a practice of mindfulness and meditation. So I would like you to find a relaxed, comfortable position, seated on a chair or on the floor, or even on a cushion. Keep your back upright, but not too tight. Hands resting wherever they're comfortable. Tongue on the roof of your mouth or wherever it's comfortable. And you can notice your body from the inside, noticing the shape of your body, the weight, touch, and let yourself relax. And become curious about your body. Seated here, the sensations of your body, the touch, the connection to the floor, the chair. Relax any areas of tightness or tension. And just breathe. Soften. And now begin to tune into your breath, in your body, feeling the natural flow of your breath. You don't need to do anything but breathe. Not long breaths, not short, just natural. And notice where you feel your breath in your body. It might be in your abdomen. It may be in your chest or throat or in your nostrils. See if you can feel the sensation of breath. One breath at a time. When one breath ends, another one begins. Now, as you do this, you might notice that your mind might start to wander. You might start thinking about other things. If this happens, this is not a problem. It's very natural. Just notice that your mind has wandered. And you can say thinking, or wandering in your head softly. And gently redirect yourself and your attention back to your breath. So we'll stay with this for some time in silence, just a short time. Noticing our breath. From time to time, getting lost in thought and returning back to our breath. See if you can be really kind to yourself in the process. And once again, you can notice your body. Your whole body seated here. Let yourself relax even more than deeply. And offer yourself some appreciation for doing this practice today. Whatever that means to you, find a sense of ease and well-being for yourself and for this day.
All
Namaste.
right. So as we move on, think about, now that we've cleared our heads from everything, where you're at with your level of self-awareness. Why is this important to have increased self-awareness? Well, it helps us be mindful of our own values and positionality. It also helps us to develop an awareness of our thoughts and feelings that may be interfering with the effectiveness of our work and relationships.
So our next activity is tied to mindfulness in the senses. And for this one, we're going to, obviously we're providing you with the scripts and the videos and the sounds so that you can do this on your own without listening to us. But I'm going to go ahead and we're going to play the video. Are we not getting sound?
No.
If the sound doesn't work, anyone who's viewing the presentation can also access this link directly from inside of our presentation, as well as at that website that we gave you on the first slide.
So I think what I'm going to do is, instead of walking them through the activity, the video is here. You can take that piece of chocolate and listen to the video as you go through it, and it's going to walk you through a mindful sense of recognition of all the senses when you're eating, something that in our today's world we move quickly through and kind of forget. We're in a rush, we eat quickly, whereas this activity lets you breathe and experience the chocolate for itself.
Children grow up with varied types of discipline and relationships to authority. To teach, we need to understand how each student learns and how each family functions. So this is a book, The Way of Mindful Education. That's really it's about cultivating well-being in teachers and students. So this quote from Ratchis Chaffin, excuse me if I said that incorrectly, he states, "Our mindfulness practice can help us let go of our static worldview and understand the diverse ways of being in the world."
Our third activity is mindful listening. Now for this one, now that we've had an opportunity to experience mindfulness in some different ways, a big part of it is listening. And this is something that I know when I was a primary teacher, I found very useful because I worked with my students to listen using their ears, their mind, their eyes, their attention, and their hearts. And the way this works is, now we have this set up so it can be done with breakout rooms or some sort of activity, but basically what happens is one uses all their senses to listen while the other speaks, and then you switch. And in today's world where a lot of us are teaching using Zoom or other similar video forms, it's really important to try this both with sound on and sound and video on, so that you have that sense of why is it important to turn our videos on when we're interacting. And just some follow-up questions to think about. Why is it important for professors to have their video on? Is it harder to engage with a blank screen? And in what ways? Would this activity with students help them understand the importance of turning on their videos? Or from a social justice perspective, is it kinder to allow them to leave their videos off? Our fourth activity is Zentangles. So for this one, you're going to want your sheet of paper and your pencil, and we're going to start with a moment of gratitude. Just be in the moment and thankful for your tools and the time you have to create something. Then we're going to start with our corner dots. Are you afraid of a blank page? They instruct you to place a light pencil dot in each corner of your paper with a pen, about a pen's width from the edges. So it gets you started. Then draw some borders. You're going to connect your dots. They can be straight lines, curvy lines, wavy lines. And then add some strings. I went from corner to corner, but your strings can go across. They can wave, they can be straight, they can be curly. They can go around in circles, they can make shapes. Your strings can do anything you want them to. A tangle is a sequence of simple strokes that make up a pattern. Draw these elements inside the strings in your borders. Be deliberate when you make your strokes. Focus on your pen while you do so. Trust that you know what to do next when the time to do it comes. From there, you can shade in different parts, coloring in, and then you want to sign it and appreciate it. There are a lot of different ways that you can engage in patterns. And there's a lot of ways that a finished Zentangle can look.
Beautiful.
So from some additional resources, ideas for ways to continue to integrate mindfulness into classes or Zoom sessions, there are things like,
we have a gratitude journal, which you can actually click on the link. And this will really, if we do engage in this gratitude journal every day, we can rewire our brains to focus on the positives in our life. And this will take practice, but it really trains our brains to work, to think about and to focus on the positive things and reflect upon that, what is going on. So we've actually linked this to a gratitude journal template that's really beautiful. It has morning gratitude, what you're learning, the challenges you're facing, people you're grateful for, things you've accomplished throughout the day, what's the best part of the day. So really training that mind, and this is a beautiful layout. You can also do this with your students. And also the second link is also another gratitude journal that just looks a little different, but it's just so beautiful to try to train and rewire our brain to focus on positives and be mindful of the positive aspects of our lives.
Additionally, Lots of professors have come up with some great resources for integrating mindfulness in different ways. We've provided links here that link you to each one of them, like the mindful body scan, breath regulating exercises, heart math coherence, which is a really interesting field of study with pulse and breathing with each other, discovery labyrinths, things like that. Really interesting things. So please check those out.
Yeah, great resources.
And of course,
Finally, we just want to finish up with discussing what we think some of the impacts of all of this are, which is that meaningfulness improves the sense of presence, being in the present moment for both educators and students. It also improves the capacity for empathy, effective communication, and interpersonal relationships. So all around, from stress and anxiety reduction to improved empathy and relationships, mindfulness can only enhance the quality of your life and the quality of your students' experience in your classrooms, in your courses.
And make your interactions more meaningful.
Yes. So we've provided a list of our references here. And at the very end, again, we have our title slide that includes the link to this entire presentation so that you can access links to all of the mindfulness activities, including the chocolate eating video, which is very enjoyable. Thank you for joining us today.